Well, hello, hello, hello. Hi.
Hey, Johnathan. How are you this evening?
I'm good. How about you, Nadine?
I am very good today. It's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful day.
Yes, we got to walk a little bit through the
We
city,
did. Yes, we did.
visiting one of our favorite places, and
Yes, we did.
it was such a nice day. It wasn't too warm or too cold. It was just like chef's kiss, perfect.
Yes.
Um, but before we continue, our usual and very important acknowledgments and recognitions, and that is that Black Lives
Lives
Matter
matter.
today and always and forever, and until everyone can shout. How many times have we said this?
We're going to keep saying it. We're going to be saying
I
it
know,
hundreds and thousands of times.
I know, and at some point, I want more people shouting it, not on the live, not on the internet, but actually on the real life.
And in keeping with that, sorry to interrupt you, but I don't want to
No.
forget to say Juneteenth is coming up this weekend. So folks should look for Juneteenth information around the community. I think you can go to Juneteenth 2021 Reading, PA on Facebook and find all the events that are happening related to Juneteenth this weekend.
Yes, on Friday there's gonna be a virtual event. On Saturday there's gonna be an in-person event. That one looks well. All of them look promising, but the one on Saturdays there's gonna be a lot of things happening. And on Sunday they will also have another event. I'm not sure if that one is in person or virtual, but
I'm not sure either. But also on Friday there's a flag raising, a Juneteenth flag raising at
yes,
City Hall.
yes. So it's like
I think that's
in-person, virtual stuff. Yes,
yeah.
So be sure
Check
to
it
check it
out.
Yeah,
Don't miss
absolutely.
it because Black Lives Matter.
Exactly. So who is this person that is shouting Black Lives Matter and go to places and tune in to events in your community? So hi, my name is Johnathan Rodriguez. I use he, him, and el pronouns, and I'm the Youth and Health Resource Center Coordinator for Berks Teens Matters.
And my name is Nadine, and I am the community liaison for Berks Teens Matter. I use they and their pronouns. And today we have an amazing guest on our show, correct?
Yes. So we want to welcome to another Askable Adults Live, a very special person in our community, but also not only in our direct community, but also as one of our community partners. So let's welcome the Director of Training, Community Outreach, and Education from Planned Parenthood, Keystone, and founder of The Spectrum, Amber Ganon. Hi, Amber.
Hello. Hi.
Good to have you here.
Hello, friends.
How are you?
I am great. How are you?
Oh, good. Thank you for being here. One of the things that we mentioned, or well, the last thing before your name, was that you are the founder of Spectrum, and through your work and advocacy in and out of Planned Parenthood, you have brought visibility to many folks in the LGBTQ plus community, and also, being Pride Month, a celebration of all identities. We thought it would be important to talk about some identities that are made invisible or erased. So it's quite common for people to be familiar with the LGBT acronym. Although familiar doesn't mean that they are well understood, but not with the rest of the alphabet. Interesting enough, folks who are familiar with the B as in bisexual they tend to misunderstood and utterly erase this orientation from the map. Can you talk to us about bisexual erasure?
I sure can, because it's something that I hear a lot about professionally, and also it's close to my heart being the letter B myself. Mm-hmm. So bisexuality is one of those identities in the queer community that often gets misunderstood, right? So like all sexualities, people who identify as bisexual, they might be experiencing their attractions in different ways, in different degrees, at different times in their lives. And we know that there have been several studies done that show that, like, when they look at the breakdown of the larger LGBT community, the largest section of like how people identify is often bisexual. And yet, even though they're the largest like subgroup, they're often really misunderstood, really misrepresented by other letters in the alphabet. So there have been situations where people who are bi-identified that have been intentionally excluded from like queer spaces because they have what's considered straight passing privilege, or because they're assumed heterosexual because they're in different gender partnerships. So bi-erasure and really biphobia can show up in a lot of different ways. So I have personally heard all kinds of like stigmatizing jokes or comments that are meant to undermine attraction to multiple genders. People refer to folks in the bi community with all kinds of like prejudices and misconceptions, like they're promiscuous, or they are cheaters, or that they're using their bi identity as a bridge to coming out as something else. So like they're secretly really gay, or that they're wearing their bi hat as like a cool status. Like, oh, I just do it for, attention. You hear that a lot. I remember that when I was in college, they would say, oh, you're, they call them bugs, bi until graduation.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah,
I never heard that term before.
Bugs and lugs. Lugs were lesbian until graduation. So, they came at us that way too.
Wow.
Yeah. So, I think it's like really important to understand that with bisexuality, or really any sexual orientation, people have the right to define their own sexuality and their own identity. Like gatekeeping, like for example, someone who says that they're bisexual but they're in a monogamous marriage with a different gender partner, that doesn't negate their identity. Like no one else gets to define who you are, like based on your current partner or your history or anything like that. But what I do see is in the larger LGBT community, that does happen a lot.
Yeah.
It's just interesting to note that those kinds of prejudices and that kind of discrimination happens within the community as well as outside of the community. It's human beings everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's one thing is that happens outside, but another thing is that happens inside the community. So there's a lot of education to be done in and outside the community. But of course, if, for example, I always go to the representation in the media. So, sometimes you will have a bisexual character, and maybe they are represented more in maybe in a heterosexual kind of way, and not that then a bisexual person needs to be represented, dating two, all, different genders at the same time, but just to make who they are a little bit more evident. Especially if what you are looking for is to represent, people, because I think that's also important to put out, especially when they are, we have this character that is bisexual, has never had a relationship with a person that is on another gender, but then it's like, where is that bisexuality coming from? Even in the words, in their thoughts, in their how are you actually putting that forward? Which one thing is in the media and one other one is in real life. Okay, so in real life you can do whatever you want to be. but
talking about the media, I got to tell you what came into my mind. I know that I'm dating myself here as a 90s kid, but I was so into Buffy, if you'll remember that show.
Okay, yeah.
The character of Willow, she definitely had crushes on boys. She was in love with a young werewolf at one point. And then when she met a woman and fell in love with her, they no longer called her, like, it was never a bisexual character. It was, I'm gay now. And so that was the first media representation of bi erasure. Like, it negated her feelings for Xander and for Oz. And I watched that as a young, coming out of the closet girl, just like, oh, and that, that hurt me to watch. Wow. And so I think that's just a big example of in the media what they do to bi characters.
Yeah, because like, forget about this. What matters is this. It's like, well, that was representation right there.
Opportunity applied.
Yeah, absolutely. Nadine, so can you talk to us a little bit about other types of erasures that exist?
Oh, well, similar to the bisexual erasure, there are some folks that can fall into the forgotten plus of LGBTQ plus acronym. There are folks who identify as asexual and aromantic, with asexuality being an orientation when a person really doesn't feel, they feel little to no sexual attraction or desire to engage in sex. That also exists on a spectrum. And aromantic is basically people who don't really feel very much in the way of romantic attraction to other people. So, and to be clear, asexuality is not like you're a priest or a nun or something. It's not the same thing as celibacy. Celibacy is a choice to not have sex, even though you may have those attractions. And asexuality is just not feeling that kind of romantic attraction, or again, not feeling that sexual attraction, and aromantic, not feeling the romantic attraction. But that said, asexuality is a sexual identity, basically. And asexual people really should be respected, just like every other human being should be respected. So why do you think people have a hard time understanding asexuality?
I think part of it is that people who are not asexual just can't wrap their head around not having the kind of attractions that they have. Just like sometimes it's difficult for a cisgender person to imagine what it's like to not be cisgender. It's not their experience, and so they can't wrap their head around it. And I think another problem is that for some people who don't experience sexual attraction, there may be a medical reason behind it. And so the real question is, are you having a lack of desire because of a medical reason and you're bothered by it and you want to try to find some sort of fix? Or is it your identity? Is this normal and natural for you and it makes you happy and it's okay?
Yeah, and you're okay with it.
Yeah. I mean, and being ace is completely valid. Mm-hmm. There are plenty of perfectly healthy people that don't have any kind of medical issue that are identifying as asexual or in that ace kind of umbrella. Yeah. So some people think of it as an orientation, some people think of it as an identity. But like, if you are in that, asexual community, you get to figure that out for yourself. No one else gets to put that label on you but you. Just the bottom line is it's up to you to decide what it means to you and if it's a label you want to wear or not.
That reminds me, interchange of words. It wasn't necessarily like a conversation. It was just, I was in a place and people were talking about identity and labels. It wasn't an argument. Let me make that clear. but what I mean is that it was just a presentation and, a couple of words were exchanged. And someone says, I just don't think that I am a pronoun, or I am a gender identity, or I am a sexual orientation. I feel like I'm just me. And it's just like, do but I don't want to confuse people. I don't want to be, and I said, your others people's confusion is not your responsibility. You are who you are, and it's not like you get to choose who you are, because we don't have a choice. That's who we are, and the choice that we made is that, are we going to be burdened by others people's confusion and perceptions and ideas, or are we just going to be ourselves? Because the only thing that we need from people is just their respect. And if someone wants to understand who we are, then okay, let's talk in a loving, respectful way. And let's not pull like fingers and point fingers, or put notions and perceptions on people. And something like asexuality, or folks that are romantic, maybe we don't get to understand it. Breathe, sit down, educate, read a little bit, and it's just like, okay, so how would that be? And maybe you will need, to hear the experience of someone like that. Just go to YouTube and search, an asexual person shares their experience, and that's how we educate ourselves. And maybe not go to your fellow asexual. It's like, can you explain me how you are? Like,
Right.
What is this? Because that's not coming from a place of love,
I always think, like, how much are these labels for other people to understand us, and how much are they for us to put a name for our own understanding?
Yeah.
And I think often, like, I talk to other people, like I do staff training for Planned Parenthood Keystone. And I was literally just having a conversation with our brand new hires today, going over different terms and identities. And I said to them, real talk, understanding is not a prerequisite for empathy. You don't have to get it. Just lead with your empathy, and the understanding will come.
Yeah. Absolutely. Oh my God, I love that. Let's put that on a t-shirt.
That's good.
I love that.
Yeah, well said.
We've been discussing a few sexual and romantic orientations, but we are also interested in discussing genders. When people think about gender, they might think about a stereotypical man or woman. But when we talk about gender, we go a bit further, especially when speaking about genders that either go beyond the binary, male, female, or which exist without any particular gender. Many people have a misunderstanding of gender identity, and that could lead to the erasure of other lesser known identities like non-binary, agender, or gender fluid. And when I say, uh, lesser known, is because, people that might not even be as knowledgeable in the LGBT, they might just don't, completely, they might be oblivious to the plus. So Amber, how would you explain what a non-binary is to a person that might not know about it?
Okay. So I think that the great majority of Americans would, if you ask them, would say that they are either male or female, or they identify as a man or a woman. And that's the binary. I think of a binary like a light switch, on, off. Like there's two options. But in reality, it's much more like a dimmer switch, where there's, you slide it in between. And actually that's simplification, because it's more like, it's not even in a line. It's all over the place. So, but really, a lot of societies like ours tend to recognize two genders, like man and woman. And the idea that there are two genders, having two parts, it's putting you in a very, very tiny box. Because many of those people that you ask them, are you a man or a woman? if you ask them further, they might say, well, I feel like a very masculine woman or a very feminine man. And if you keep digging, you might find people that actually say, you know, when I think about it, I don't really feel like a man or a woman at all. Mm-hmm. And so for those different feelings, they might use different terms like non-binary. I'm not on your light switch. I'm over here.
Yeah. Yeah. And how about agender or a person that identifies as agender?
Yeah. So, I mean, with all of the different options of gender they've heard about, they're like, none of that is me. And
we're not even a light switch.
Like, I'm not even there.
I'm even there.
I'm a campfire of gender. I'm whatever this is. And then for some people, they really, throughout their life, they might feel differently. And it might even be like month to month or day to day, where sometimes I feel like a lot of masculine energy and sometimes I feel a lot of feminine energy. And those people might say that they are gender fluid or gender queer or some sort of, you know, term in that bubble. Mm-hmm. There's so many options. I love it.
Yeah, that's one of the. Oh, Nadine, were you gonna say something?
No, go ahead, Johnathan.
Okay, that I really like because it's, I think sometimes when people reject the idea of other genders, it's like we've always been like that. You know, this is what works. This is that. But have we though? Maybe in European cultures, certain European cultures have been pretty binary.
Yes.
If you dig into history,
on the surface.
Mm-hmm. What was that?
I said on the surface.
On the surface, yeah. If you dig, if you go through the history, if you go to different cultures, you know, yeah, men, women have existed, but in many cultures have also existed other genders, people that are either in between or people that are completely outside or people that are this, but also they could be this other thing, you know, they are. And also it's, I've heard a lot of people saying, you know, oh, but what are we gonna, you know, what if tomorrow I feel like a rabbit? Well, it's not the same. You know, it's always taking it to the extreme. And you know, just because a person doesn't identify as a male or woman means that they are from another planet. They're still human.
You know, it's my understanding that there were native, like indigenous American cultures that recognized 5 distinct genders, and it's colonizers that took that from them. So, you know, it's just returning to our roots to recognize folks beyond the binary.
Yeah.
Great diversity in the human family.
Absolutely.
And with millions and billions of people in the world, do you think all of them will be exactly the same to another, you know, fellow human? You know, they will be human, but they might be a little different. They will see things differently. Nadine, I feel that you were going to say something.
No, I'm with you on that. I think that there is great diversity among human beings in so many different ways, and why should that be any different when it comes to gender, when it comes to sexual orientation? That those threads of diversity weave through all of who we are. So, Amber, if somebody would be like somebody out there who's listening, struggling with their identity or their sexuality, you've been in this business for a really long time. You have a lot of wisdom to offer. Not only have you been in this business for a long time, but you just have a real heart for this work. So what would be your advice to somebody out there who's struggling?
Well, with the fact that there's so many options and so many labels, and there's still so much like discrimination and phobia out there, like if you're feeling like you don't know how to label yourself and you're just please know that that's super common and you are not alone at all. Like for some of us, understanding our identities, you know, it can take years or even a lifetime. Like once you think you know you have it, then something changes, and like that's okay. You don't come out once and then like we chisel your identity, you know, into you like stone and it's permanent. You can, it's a thing that you can keep looking at your whole life if you want to. sometimes you try and label that fits, and then you change if it doesn't fit anymore. You don't have to decide on one label, and it's okay if future you feels different than today you. Just know that if you're asking, like, am I gay? Am I bi? Am I trans? Am I queer? You are not alone. And so talking to a trusted adult, or like a friend, a family member, or a caring adult in the community, like the faces you see here, like, we're happy to walk you through that. You don't have to go it alone. And there are so many people in your life that care about you. But if you need to look outside of your bubble, there are places like the Spectrum. There are places like the LGBT Center, the folks at Berks Teens Matter. Like, there are caring adults that can work it through with you.
Yeah. And speaking of caring adults, one of our big things on this show is we really want to support parents and other adults who are young people's lives to be that resource for them. But sometimes they might not know very much, or they might not know how to respond if the young person in their life is struggling through this. So what advice would you have for the parents or the other adults in young people's lives?
So the great work of a teenager is figuring out who they are in so many different ways, right? And figuring out your sexual orientation and your gender identity is part of that figuring out who you are. And no matter what your teen's identity is, they're probably going to have a lot of questions about it. So if you have a young person who's recently come out to you and you're finding it hard to cope with that, also know that you're not alone. Maybe you're feeling worried about what that means for your teen's health, or you're worried about acceptance from your community. Maybe you're actually feeling a little bit guilty about some anti-LGBT stuff that you've said in the past. You realize that, I've said some words that probably hit different than I thought they would because I didn't realize my youngin was in the community. Just know that it is never too late to show your support and create a safe space for your young person. Years ago, I used to attend the PFLAG meetings in Berks County, and it was full of just grizzly bear mamas who were awesome that would share stories about all the ways that they had failed their child in the beginning and got it wrong. And then they put on their, big mama pants and got it right. So I think the best advice, if you're struggling, is to find a community of parents that are going through the same thing. PFLAG is a great resource, but if they're not meeting where you are, I would look at your local LGBT center. I know here in Reading, we have the LGBT center that's awesome. There might also be support groups that you can hook your young person up with. There might be a gay, straight, or a GSA in your school, the local LGBT center, even your local Planned Parenthood center. I know that Planned Parenthood Keystone, we have 3 LGBT groups in York, in Berks County, and in Bucks County that would love to chat with you and your young person. I just want to put it out there that LGBT folks live beautiful, happy, joyful, wonderful lives. But to have that outcome, the biggest thing that can push them toward that joy and that great outcome is support from their people at home. We also know that LGBT youth have higher rates of homelessness and suicide and self-harm and mental health. And all of that is wrapped up around family rejection. So just know that you loving and caring for, even if you don't quite understand yet, your young person, is what's going to help them grow into happy, healthy adults. And I already appreciate you for trying. If you're listening today and you're like, I'm going to lean in, mama to mama, I'm so happy that you're listening.
That's really beautiful. Yeah. I just want to mention, I know we scrolled across the spectrum, and I know you mentioned the spectrum. I just want to say that Amber is the founder of the Spectrum here in Berks County. I remember way back when that was just getting started, and I used to volunteer there from time to time. I so appreciated everything that you did. And Spectrum was, for people who don't know, Spectrum was the first community-based space for LGBTQ plus young people to come and be able to feel like they could be who they were, and they were respected, they were appreciated, they learned so much, and also had really good time doing it. So I just want to honor that.
Thank you.
and we've I've come across several people that went to Spectrum or that is going to Spectrum, and they loved it. It's a safe place to talk, to learn, and to meet other LGBTQ plus folks that are in the same kind of like age range. And I've also met with parents that they're like, my son is gay, my daughter is a lesbian, I think my child is transgender. What should I do? And I'm like, Spectrum, the LGBT Center. This. Just go there.
Get connected.
Get connected. Not only for the socialization and the interaction of your queer kid with the community, but also you as a parent.
Yes.
And if I would be a parent, I would like to know who the people from Spectrum is, who the people from the LGBT Center is, because that's where I will hope that my kid will hang out. So
a healthy space, a healthy, safe space.
Exactly. And not only for them, but for your peace of mind as a parent. Yes. I know that they have my kids back. And by having my kids back, they have my back. So I hope that people can
yeah. And it just popped into my head. If you have a young person who is not okay with in person yet, there are other options. We have a program called the Rainbow Room that meets on Wednesdays online, but there's also Q Chat Space, which is national, and Gender Spectrum, so it's specifically like for folks that are the letter T and all the other permutations. So there's a lot of good stuff out there. If there's anything good that came from the pandemic, we have built up just a network across the nation of support for young people. So if you need that information, reach out to any of us and we can get that to you.
Yes.
Absolutely. So thank you so much, Amber, for being here with us, for gracing us with your presence. For folks that will be interested in visiting Planned Parenthood or setting an appointment, here is the link to Planned Parenthood Keystone. Or if you need to go in person, this is where they are because they moved. And please, all of the rest of the people, remember to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, etc., etc., etc. I think interesting things are coming up, so but we're not ready to tell it yet. But thank you so much, and hopefully we will continue this amazing chat on Pride and all things Pride next week. Bye.
And thanks, Amber.
You're welcome. Good night, all.